Hey everybody, this is Jesse P. Gilmore, agency transformation coach and founder of Niche in Control, author of The Agency Owner's Guide to Freedom, and the creator of Leverage for Growth. I'm the host of the Leverage for Growth podcast, and I know that in order for you to scale your agency successfully, there are multiple shifts that need to happen within your mindset, skill set, and leadership style. I am on a mission to interview marketing and PR agency owners on their journey to 6, 7, and 8 figures and leverage the lessons from their journey to save you time, energy, and money to get your agency to the next level. If you find value in these episodes, watch the case study video to learn more about Leverage for Growth and how we successfully scale agencies at nicheincontrol.com/case study. That is nicheincontrol.com/case study. You are now listening to Leverage for Growth. Hey everybody, this is Jesse P. Gilmore, founder of Niche in Control and the creator of Leverage for Growth. Welcome to the Agency Leverage Edition. Today I am here with David Blois, the founding partner of M&A Advisory, a London-based firm specializing in mergers and acquisitions for marketing, communications, and creative agencies around the globe. With over 30 years of experience in agency M&A, David has helped businesses of all sizes, from six-figure shops to multi-million-dollar agencies, navigating the complex process of valuation, negotiation, and successful exits. He has seen it all: the red flags in deal structures, the pitfalls in founder dependence, and the key ingredients that make an agency truly acquisition ready. Today, he will share what agency owners need to know long before they're ready to sell, why building a business that runs without you is critical to maximizing value, and how to prepare for a successful M&A journey, even if you're not planning to exit anytime soon. David, welcome to the show.
Delighted to be on the show, Jesse. Thanks very much for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start in the beginning. So, David, you've been doing M&A for over 30 years. Can you take us back to how you got started in this space? Like, what initially drew you into this type of work?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, to go right back, I suppose when I left school, I was always interested in business as a child. And I think it was my father that said, you know, if you want to learn about business, you should train to be an accountant. I don't know if that holds these days, but it gave you a good grounding in those days. So that's what I did. I applied to a large group and qualified, Reed Elsevier, qualified as an accountant with them. Had a great career. I worked all over the world with them and finished up in corporate finance doing M&A transactions for this large corporation, multi-million-pound transactions, and got a taste for it. I left them because I was really interested in a business that valued people rather than they had a very much a shareholder value ethos. So I thought it would be great to join a business that valued people. So I joined Saatchi & Saatchi and was responsible for the finances of a turnaround management business in Hungary, based in Budapest, of all places. So that gave me my baptism of fire in advertising. And when I left there, I combined my M&A experience with my advertising creative industries experience and joined a business called Results International, which were an M&A firm specializing in our sector, and stayed with them about 15 years. But over time, they started to move out of the sector. They followed the money into areas sort of healthcare and technology. So I decided about 13 or 14 years ago to start my own business, found M&A Advisory. And we do what the name says on the tin. And that's how it all started. We're central London now. We're a team of about 6 people. We're sector specific, Marcoms, but we're size and geography agnostic. So we work for all sizes of agency all around the world.
Mm-hmm. That is awesome. I'm really glad that you actually followed your passion and what got you actually into M&A in the first place, even when the company you were working for kind of veered off a little bit.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. So looking at the M&A landscape, so some people that are listening might understand mergers and acquisitions pretty well, and other people might not. So in our previous conversation, we had talked about and how you had mentioned that agency mergers and acquisitions is not really like selling a house. There's not really like a fixed price on it. So what are some of the key variables that influence how an agency is valued?
Yes, I mean that's absolutely right. A business that unlike a car or a piece of real estate that's almost got a book value, and you know that when you sell that piece that asset, you'll get that price, which corresponds pretty closely to the value. In an agency, the value is very much there's an approximate value, but you have to get the right deal because some of these deals are obviously spread over several years. You don't often get the full cash payment. And I can go on to explain how you might do that. But most of these deals have some sort of incentive payments and all of that sort of thing. And these deals need to be structured really well to make sure you get the maximum value out of it. And also, you need to make sure you have the best buyer possible. And we say there's got to be three elements in choosing the right buyer. And one of those is chemistry when you first meet. When you meet a buyer for the first time, you've got to instinctively feel that you could work with them. Because if your gut is telling you otherwise, the chances are your gut is right. The second thing we say that's got to be right with an agency deal is a cultural fit. There's got to be a similar culture, business culture. And we describe that as the way we do things around here. You know, you wouldn't put a bureaucratic business with an entrepreneurial business. So that's very important. And thirdly, you've got to have an outstanding business proposition. So there's got to be a real commercial opportunity for those two businesses to get together. And all of those things together will drive you through all of those incentive payments and make sure you get paid. So you have the sort of the setup, the right partner on the one side, and a well negotiated deal on the other side. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome, man. And I bet you there's probably some misconceptions, common misconceptions that agency owners have about selling their business or even getting it valued. What would be some of those ones that you've noticed in the market?
Gosh, as I say, I suppose there's that first one where don't treat the value as a standard value that you can always get that for your agency because it very much depends on the partner, the buyer, and it very much depends on how well that deal is structured and negotiated. That's so important. I think a lot of people probably don't realize that they have to make the business as buyer friendly as possible. And what I mean by that is the business has got to be sustainable. A buyer's worst fear when he goes to buy an agency is that he'll buy it, the founder will leave, and he'll be left with something he can't control. It'll just fall away in his hands. That's his nightmare. So what you've got to try and do is make the business as sustainable as possible. And some of those things to make a business as sustainable are good financial systems and procedures, a good new business pipeline so that you haven't got any lumpy cash flows. There's got to be a second tier management team because the buyer will probably recognize that one day the founder will leave. So you've got to have a good second tier that will take the business over. So in that way, the founder has got to work on the business rather than in the business. And he's gradually got to, over time, when preparing for sale, he's got to start to extract himself to some degree from the business and act as more of an investor rather than an actual participating owner. So that really helps.
Mm-hmm. And my assumption, and obviously I'm not in the M&A space as much, but my assumption is that what you just described a second ago about founder dependence is actually not something that's new. It's like something
Sure.
that's stayed in the M&A as being needed. Is that correct?
Yes, that's absolutely right. I think that sort of cliche of working on the business rather than in the business is an older one. I mean, it is possible to sell an agency where you've got quite a lot of reliance on the founder, but the founder's going to have to stay with the deal for a few years. You know, I did a deal a year or so ago where the founders sold 60% of the business and kept 40% for 3 or 4 years, which was then bought out. And they helped build that business inside the new acquirer, and it grew really, really well because you're taking advantage of the buyer's infrastructure and client base to grow that business. So they're quite good deals, and they probably got about 3 or 4 times as much for the 40% as they got for the original 60. So it's not completely off the cards, but if you've got a founder who's looking to retire or move on, then it's not the best transaction. He wants to get out when we sell. So it's best in that way to actually try and move out of the business, create a sustainable business.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, looking at that landscape again, there most likely have been some changes that have happened over maybe the last decade or so. So my question to you is how has the M&A landscape changed over the past decade, especially when it comes to either digital or creative agencies?
Well, quite a lot. I mean, I suppose I've been doing it for 30 years, and originally there would probably only be 3 or 4 buyers. You'd only have, my job was quite easy. You had to make 3 or 4 phone calls to some of the bigger holding companies, and they would buy your business, and they weren't too fussy into how on sort of on the types of business they were buying. As long as it fitted broadly a strategy, they would buy it. But I think there's been a number of changes now that the market over those years, and particularly during the last 10, has got much more fragmented. There are a lot more specialist buyers out there looking for certain specialisms with agencies. So some are digital consolidators, some are PR consolidators, or they're much more specialist than they used to be in the agency world. So that's one thing. So when we work in M&A, we've got a very good research team here that was probably going to pull out several hundred possible buyers globally for each business. So it's a lot of work that we have to put into that, as well as obviously constantly speaking with buyers who may be interested in these businesses. That's one area. Another area is the private equity. Private equity's got involved in agencies, particularly in the last 10 years. So that's an interesting area. I would say that often private equity-backed roll-ups, trade roll-ups, have been very, very successful. Where private equity has just invested in agencies, that's not been, I don't think that's always been successful. And so I don't know whether we would recommend that approach. But where it's part of a roll-up and you get the trade synergies, then that can be quite successful. So that's been another element. I think the other thing that's been quite interesting is the development of deal structures. 10 or 15 years ago, the standard earnout, 2 or 3 year earnout, was the way buyers bought agencies. But the problem with those earnouts for the buyer is that legal ownership doesn't pass until that last payment is made. So that makes integration very, very difficult, very, very slow. And as everybody knows, the world has speeded up. It's constantly speeding up with the advent of technology. And people want to take advantage. If they're buying a business, they want to take advantage of it, all the synergies, as soon as possible. So there's been more creative deal structures around now, such as shares or people retaining some of their equity, different types of structure which have done away with the earnout, which I believe has helped both the buyer and the seller.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's kind of crazy when you're talking about a decade ago, you would just reach out to 3 or 4 buyers. And
They're more than a decade ago, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, there were a few less buyers around. It was an easier pool to fish in, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And going into, so this is really good to kind of give some context to M&A and your experience and kind of getting to a place where we understand maybe what is kind of transpired leading towards mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah.
For people that are listening and maybe they're kind of drawn towards either preparing for an exit or starting to think about it, And I know with Leverage for Growth and what we do for agency owners, I often ask agency owners, like, what's your end game? What are you trying to accomplish? And usually
Yeah.
what they'll say is one of three things. They'll say, I want to scale it to the moon. I want to sell it sometime in the future, or I want to work in it whenever I want to, which ultimately comes down to what you had brought up a little bit ago, the founder independence, building a business that can sustain without them. And
Yeah.
you talked a little bit about the buyer side of why that's really important. Can you unpack why it's important with mergers and acquisitions, maybe going one level deeper than what you talked about before?
Yes. I mean, I think if you create a sustainable business, it's going to be a business that you can really do what you want with. All of those things that you've talked about there, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
selling, whether it's being a part-time owner, or whether it's a business you keep for the long run as an owner and continue to grow it. You can do all of those things if you create something like a sustainable business and you're able to work, as I say, on the business rather than in it. So it gives you a huge amount of choice for sure. And selling a business, that's what buyers are looking for. So you're going to maximize your value by doing that. There's no question about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some of our clients have gone through the M&A process, and some of the things that they had talked about as being a higher valuation was when the founder is actually not even integral into the operations. They're working on it, and they're doing more like visionary types of work. And some of our clients have done the full handoff, and then other ones have kind of like kept the founder in there for a period of time, similar to what you were talking about with like the 40%. And
Yeah, there are different types of deals. You get some people that want to play on a bigger stage, or you get others that want to exit. So
mm-hmm.
the guys that want to play on a bigger stage who perhaps do an M&A because they've got a few years before retirement. So they've taken the business as far as they can, but they say, look, we want to get into the European market, we want to get into the US market, and the cost of investment to do that would be quite high. So they'll go and sell maybe a percentage or something like that to a larger group, and then that way they can tap into all of the resources of that larger group, and it's often pretty successful. We call it
Mm-hmm.
playing on a bigger stage, according to
Mm-hmm,
our
yeah.
strapline.
The motto right behind you.
Right behind me, just in case I forget.
And I'm sure in your experience over the last 30 years, you've probably seen some deals that just kind of fall apart. So what are some of those kind of like red flags that make you say, maybe this business is not ready?
Yes, it's an interesting one. I mean, it's more with when we do the execution of the deal, you have to make sure that you have those three elements in the deal. You've got to have that chemistry, the cultural match, and the outstanding business proposition. Those are really essential. If they're all present, the chances are the deal will be good. If one of them's missing, I would definitely put a red flag on that. Um, so I think that's one area. Um, and yeah, I think where you get a situation where the founder is still heavily involved but wants to leave, that's something that's going to be very difficult to sell. Buyers are quite astute in this industry, and they will pick up on that even if you tell them otherwise. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's often quite difficult to sell a business in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you kind of answered my question of, all right, what are the green flags or like good things? Because it's basically
Yeah,
those three. So that's really key.
yeah, I think that's very key. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And for people that might be considering it, not necessarily now, but maybe in like 3 to 5 years or so, if they're curious about it, what would be some of the things that you would suggest that they do today to start gearing up for that, or even preparing for it, or wrapping their head around? Maybe I get acquired in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think 3 to 5 years out is a great time to start thinking about it because um, that gives you plenty of time to make any changes to your business. And one of the things we offer is what we call it a commercial review of the business, and it'll be like an MOT. We'll look at the business and say, that there's too much founder dependency, or there might be too much client dependency, or there may be some gaps in your second tier management team, all of that sort of thing. And there are other firms that also do these reviews, and that might be something you do also, Jesse. That's worth doing to sort of set the store on where you are and where you want to get to, because it is a pathway. And also, to use people like you, Jesse, to actually work with, to prepare that business for sale, to actually get that business on another level, because that really does help when you've got all the boxes ticked in terms of what buyers are looking for. And other things there, perhaps look at it from a strategic angle as well, to make sure it's got a clear business proposition, that you're not jack of all trades, master of none, and that sort of thing, because those sorts of things attract buyers as well. And get things right. One thing that always amazes me is that for marketing agencies, they are the worst in the world at doing their marketing. It's a real cobbler's children syndrome. And that's something that's really worth doing, especially in this day and age where you've got AI and other things that you might say what got you here won't get you there. And you really have to create a machine that's going to get you there. And I think one of the other things is you've got to bear in mind, if you're planning an exit, the timing of it and what you want to do personally. People often say to me, when shall I sell? And my answer to them in this business, where you have to be driven by passion to run these businesses, is when do you want to sell? So you've got to work out a timeline. So you might be 5 years out. And some people think, oh, great, I'm 5 years out from selling. And you think selling's just going to happen like that. But it doesn't. You have to talk to various buyers. So what you might want to do is say, well, if I want to sell in 5 years, it's going to take me, you have to allow a year in your mind. Selling a business takes between 6 and 9 months. But in your mind, you have to allow for a year. And you've probably got incentive payments for maybe 2 or 3 years at least after that. So that could be up to 4 years. So although you think you might be selling in 5 years, actually, you're probably going to be starting next year. So it's all of these things are worth bearing in mind.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love the long-term thinking. It's like exactly what I tell all clients to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah. You've got to start with where you want to get to and plot all the stages.
Mm-hmm. And I know from our previous conversation that you prefer having conversations with some agency owners over kind of like formal valuations. Why is that? Like what kind of value do people get from like a 15, 30-minute conversation with you about their agency?
Yes, when we meet people for the first time, and we can give people a pretty good steer on, I guess we're going to ask them what they're looking to do, what they want to do. And we can give them a pretty good steer, where they'll tell us about their business and we'll be able to give them an idea on value or potential value. And in that short conversation, we've been doing this a long time, so we see lots of agencies. So we can also give them a steer on what they might need to do to prepare for a sale, because it's quite surprising. A lot of people come to us and they just say, I want to sell my business. And they're way off creating something that's sellable, even though it could well be an excellent business. But they're still very involved in the business, and maybe they're not charging their salaries to the business. They're just taking dividends. So it sort of overinflates their profits, different things like that. So it's worthwhile conversation very happy to give any agency owner, half an hour or so to talk over their business.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, man. And you talked about kind of like the long term and starting it early. How early is too early to talk to you or an M&A advisor? And then also, what kind of information should they be ready to share when they do?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak with anybody at any time, really. Some people come to us and they're not ready to sell for 10 years or whatever, but they just perhaps talk about their model or what the type of thing they want to create and sense check it with us. But things we like to know are our revenue, operating profit, if they don't mind disclosing that, whether they've got heavy reliance on clients, the quality of their second management team. It's all of those sorts of questions, and most importantly is what they want to do. What they want to do with their business. Are they? Because very often, they're working hard. They've worked hard in this business. They want to create some sort of legacy, and also they want some sort of value for it at the end. What sort of money do you want to walk away with? So all of these things we can sort of reverse engineer and give them the odds.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I have a feeling like we could probably go for another 30 minutes unpacking success stories and so forth. But David, let me ask you. So let's just say somebody that's listening to this is like, I would love to talk with David. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you and maybe have one of these consultations?
Yeah, well, I'd be delighted to speak with anybody. We're LinkedIn, you'll find me, David Blois, or find M&A Advisory. My email address is davidb@m&aadvisory.com. But as I say, it's on my LinkedIn, it's on our website. M&aadvisory.com is our website. Yeah, be delighted to speak with anybody who'd like a view.
Awesome. And for anybody that's listening, I'll include the links to David and M&A Advisory in the show notes. And David, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks, Jesse. It's been a real pleasure. And thanks to the listeners for listening.
Agency owners, if you want to transform your agency to sustain and grow without your direct involvement, where you can stop working in the business and start working on the business, where you can free up your time, delegate work more effectively, price and position your services to finally get paid for what you're worth, and have the team run the day-to-day, go to nicheandcontrol.com/case study now to learn more about leverage for growth. And also to book a free strategy session with us. We'll look at your systems, determine exactly what you need to do in order for you to scale this year, and to create a strategic plan so that you can live the life of entrepreneurship you've always dreamed about. Go to nicheandcontrol.com/case study now.